World War II bombers buried in Greenland. The rest of the story is at the very end of the story. In July 1942, a group of 6 P-38 Lightning fighter aircraft and 2 B-17 Flying Fortress bombers were flying from the US to Britain when they encountered a severe storm. The pilots struggled to maintain control of their aircraft as the winds buffeted them violently. Jagged bolts of lightning lit up the dark clouds around them, followed by deafening cracks of thunder. The turbulence was so bad, the pilots could barely read their instruments. In the cockpit of one of the P-38s, Lieutenant Frank Johnson gripped his control stick with white knuckles, using all his strength just to keep his plane level. Sweat beaded on his brow as he fought against the powerful updrafts and downdrafts. In the seat behind him, Captain Bill Davies tried in vain to get a fix on their position from the sputtering radio. But the storm was wreaking havoc on their electrical systems. "I can't get anything on the radio," he yelled to Johnson over the groaning of the airframe. In the B-17s, the crews were being tossed about in the cabins like rag dolls. The pilots had to use both hands just to turn the yokes even slightly against the vicious winds. They knew if they lost control now, they would spiral down into the raging sea below. Lightning illuminated the horizon for a brief moment, and the pilots gasped. Looming out of the clouds directly in their path were the dark, ominous forms of the Greenland ice packs. They were dangerously off course and headed right for the ice. The pilots stared in horror at the rapidly approaching ice packs looming out of the dark clouds ahead. There was no way they could turn in time to avoid them. "Brace for impact!" Lieutenant Johnson yelled to Captain Davies. The P-38 pilots pulled back on the yokes with all their strength, desperately trying to gain what little altitude they could before hitting the icy ice field. The planes shuddered violently as they clipped the tops of snowy ridges, sending plumes of powder blasting into the air. In the B-17s, the crews scrambled to secure anything loose and strap themselves into their seats. The Flying Fortresses plowed through snowbanks, their landing gear tearing away as they screeched across the icy terrain. The planes ground to a halt just short of a flowing stream. The crews rattled, but miraculously still alive. As the adrenaline began to wear off, the stunned pilots and crews took stock of their situation. They were stranded in the middle of nowhere, their planes grounded, with no radio contact and another blizzard fast approaching. But they had survived a harrowing mid-air emergency and were determined to work together to stay alive in the harsh Arctic conditions until a rescue team could reach them. Huddled in the wrecked planes, they took inventory of their supplies and tended to the minor injuries sustained in the crash landings. It was going to be a battle for survival, but they had made it through the worst of the storm. Recently, years after the crash of the World War II bombers and fighters, an ice drilling project involving 14 countries called NEAM have been drilling ice cores through Iceland's 2.5 kilometers thick ice sheet. They determine the age of the ice cores by counting the layers of ice, much like counting tree rings, since each layer represents 1 year of snowfall. The director talking to the news team said, "So a centimeter of ice is approximately 2.2 years of history." The NEAM drilling team carefully extracted and analyzed the icy layers, looking for anomalies that could indicate anything unusual buried deep in the glacier. About 250 meters down, or what they were saying was 550,000 years of snowpack, they noticed an abrupt distortion in the otherwise smooth bands of layered ice. Upon further investigation, they were shocked to discover traces of aircraft metal and old rubber scattered in the ice.
"Dear Mother," the lead driller muttered. Could this be part of one of those lost warplanes from the 1940s?
A recovery team was put together to recover what they could from the wreckage. The team quickly widened the borehole and lowered cameras into the dark cavity they had uncovered. Grainy footage revealed the ghostly, partially crushed forms of W2-era planes entombed in the ancient ice. One wing still bore faded stars and stripes insignia. As the news spread, recovery plans were hastily drawn up. The previously unknown crash site ignited intrigue and controversy across the aviation archaeology community. How did the planes end up so far off course? All of the crews had survived. Did any of their history? Months later, excavation teams used hot water jets to carefully melt away the surrounding ice, then lift out the broken aircraft pieces. Some crucial parts and ID tags were recovered to aid identification. But most haunting were personal effects found frozen in time. An old leather helmet, a letter home never sent, photos of smiling sweethearts. The Lost Squadron, as the planes came to be called, ultimately yielded no human remains, but their discovery shed light on that fateful flight. The recovered artifacts became treasured relics of their incredible survival and the very inaccurate aging methods of core drilling. Yup, 60 years of packed snowfall does not equate to 550,000 years.